Now, this Pete Alonso saga with the New York Mets is still ongoing, even after Steve Cohen and David Stearns on Amazing Day this past Saturday at Citi Field basically torched not only Scott Boras, but Pete Alonso. They basically stated if you didn't see it, you can go check it out. It's all over the internet. Just go on X and type in Pete Alonso, Steve Cohen comments, and it'll be right there. What they basically said is Pete Alonso and Scott Boras are out of their freaking minds. If they think they're getting what they want, they're out of their minds. And quite frankly, Steve Cohen and David Stearns are right. As much as I want Pete Alonso back, as much as many of you might want Pete Alonso back, Pete Alonso and Scott Boras are just out of their minds right now with their contract demands. Evan Roberts at WFAN just last Saturday, he reported that Scott Boras is trying to get buyout money. So what that means is if they opt out of that first year or second year, Pete Alonso would get additional money from the New York Mets. That's insane. Pete Alonso is not that type of player. Pete Alonso turned down a contract which would have made him like I think the third highest paid first baseman in all of baseball. Like, do we think Pete Alonso deserves more money than a Matt Olson? No. But guess what? The contract that he turned down, the 3 year, $68 to $70 million contract, that would have made him paid higher than Matt Olson of the Atlanta Braves. And I think we all know, respectfully to Pete, he ain't no Matt Olson. Now, Pete Alonso in 2022, he put a fantastic year together, hit over 270, 40 home runs, led the league in RBIs, well, tied the league in RBIs with Aaron Judge. But at the same time, since 2022, since that season, he's declined. He had less than 135 strikeouts in 2022. He upped that to over 150 in 2023. In 2024, over 170 strikeouts from Alonso. I get it. He's never missed more than 10 games in a season. I get it. In 3 out of 5 of his full seasons, he's hit 40 plus homers, 115 plus RBIs. Those are things that I've said and why the Mets should bring him back. And I still do think the Mets should bring them back, but I don't think they should go digging deep into their pockets because at the end of the day, Pete Alonso isn't what he used to be. His best years certainly seem like they're behind him. I could be wrong. I could 100% be wrong. He could come back to the Mets on a team-friendly deal, and he could put together his best season in the same lineup as Juan Soto, Francisco Lindor, Mark Vientos, Brandon Nimmo. The Mets have a very intriguing lineup with or without Pete Alonso, and that's why the Mets have the upper hand in this. And Andy Martino of SNY, he just reported yesterday that if Pete Alonso wants to sign with the Toronto Blue Jays, it might not be a better deal than what he would get with the Mets. One, taxes play a huge factor. If they just offered him $5 million more than what the Mets offer, you look at that in taxes, Toronto takes out a lot of tax from those contracts. And they just signed Anthony Santander too. So do they want to dig deep into their pockets, lose another draft pick by signing a guy who got the qualifying offer? Because Anthony Santander got the qualifying offer. They already lost a draft pick there. They would be losing another one by signing Pete Alonso. So the Mets have the upper hand right now in these negotiations. And if Pete Alonso, like he stated numerous times over the past 6 seasons he's been with Queens, he needs to realize he's not what he thinks he's worth. That's it. And that's plain and simple. It sucks. He's going to have to swallow that pride pill. But at the end of the day, the best fit for Pete Alonso is the Mets. That's it. He goes to the Toronto Blue Jays. He's not getting his number retired with any MLB team. He signs with the New York Mets. He debatably will get, probably, most likely will get his number retired because he's just 26 home runs away from surpassing Darryl Strawberry as the all-time home run king in the blue and orange. So Pete Alonso, his best option is to come back to New York. That's it. John Heyman, he reported just recently, literally a few hours ago, and I quote, no more than 48 hours after publicly lamenting or lamenting the seemingly endless saga. And yeah, I mentioned the booze there as well when David Stearns told them how wonderful their prospects are, blah, 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 blah. Cohen was back in conversation with Alonso's camp. Truly, it's hard to know what to make of the ongoing saga involving the National League's top home run hitter since he came into the league and one of the most prolific in the history of the franchise. But from my drama-free distance, it feels like Alonso desperately hopes to return while the Mets could go either way. And what John Heyman said is quite frankly true. Because with or without Pete, The Mets still have a very good lineup. And I get it, the Philadelphia Phillies and the Atlanta Braves, and yes, the Los Angeles Dodgers do exist in the National League. And for those two teams, the Braves and Phillies, in our own division. But for anybody who's saying that we need Pete Alonso for protection for Juan Soto, they're out of their freaking minds, man. With or without Pete Alonso, Juan Soto is still going to be an MVP caliber player for New York. Plain and simple. He didn't have protection in his last few years with the Washington Nationals. In 2022, I mean, a lot of those guys were hurt. Soto didn't have much protection there. Still went off, even in 2023. So Soto doesn't need Alonso to be an MVP caliber player. Just because he's not hidden behind Aaron Judge anymore, it doesn't mean anything. Like, do Mets fans and fans around the league not realize that Francisco Lindor exists? He just finished second in NL MVP voting in 2024. Do Mets fans and baseball fans around the league not realize that Mark Vientos exists? And you could say, oh, well, pitchers are going to adjust to him. Well, pitchers adjust in the postseason as well. He hit 100 in 110 games. He hit 27 home runs. And then he went absolutely berserk in the freaking playoffs. So Vientos, in my opinion, I think he's legit. And then Brandon Nimmo. Everybody is just forgetting about Brandon freaking Nimmo. Brandon Nimmo has a 808 career OPS. Going into last year, yes, he had a down year in 2024, but we got to keep in mind, Brandon Nimmo was also hurt. Let's go over Brandon Nimmo's numbers since 2020. 2020, 888 OPS. 2021, 838 OPS. 2022, 800 OPS. 2023, 829 OPS. You want to go over home runs? Well, there we go. 2023, 24 home runs. Brandon Nimmo is a 20-plus home run hitter, an 800-plus OPS hitter. This past season, he had 90 RBIs, a career high. Give me a break that we desperately need Pete Alonso. We don't desperately need Pete Alonso. They don't. Would I love to have him? Would he make this lineup better? Yeah, 100%. But we do not need Pete Alonso for $25 million a year. Quite frankly, they don't. The Mets would be better off waiting until the trade deadline to see what the Toronto Blue Jays are looking like. If they're out of it, maybe you make that trade for Vlad Guerrero Jr. and the trade price kind of goes down because the Blue Jays wouldn't want to lose him for straight up nothing. You trade for a guy like Vladdy now, you're going to have to give a lot of prospects up. And with the way that they're trying to move right now, with them being in on Pete Alonso, with them just recently signing Anthony Santander, they're going to try to win. Could they always not win? Yeah. I mean, the Boston Red Sox are going to be good. The Baltimore Orioles, they have a great young team, a very intriguing young team led by Gunnar Henderson. You got the Yankees going out there and making moves after they lost Juan Soto by trading for Cody Bellinger, trading for Devin Williams, signing Paul Goldschmidt. Like, they made good moves, and we're going to go over that in a little bit. Not amazing moves, but very good moves, in my opinion, especially the Devin Williams one. But the Mets don't need Pete Alonso as much as Pete Alonso needs the Mets, and that's why they have the upper hand. And ultimately, I do think, whereas a few weeks back, I was saying Pete Alonso and the Mets are just not going to happen. They're not going to have that reunion. And now I'm sitting here tonight, and I do believe that Pete Alonso will re-sign with the Mets, and he will re-sign with the Mets on Steve Cohen and David Stern's demands. Plain and simple. Like, literally, like, they have a great lineup with or without Pete Alonso. And then if you get a Brett Beatty to perform, which I know he's like a 214 career hitter in his 3 years with the Mets, but if he doesn't perform, then you get Acuna. You give him a shot. If he doesn't perform, and I do think Acuna will prove his worth once he gets the real shot that Vientos got last year. Speaking of Acuna, the guy hit over 330 in the Venezuelan Winter League, multiple stolen bases, at OPS over 900. Acuna is a really talented player. So that's also another option if you don't get Pete. You also got Ronnie Mauricio, who's coming off the torn ACL. I get it, but he still had a pretty good short stint with the Mets back in 2023. He does strike out a lot too, so I'm not too high on Mauricio. I'm a little bit higher on Acuna. And then you also got Jet Williams as the wild card in there. And then also another wild card, Jose Iglesias. Sport Track right now, They have his market value set at $1.7 million, a little bit over that, I believe, but in that $1.7 million range. Iglesias, I wouldn't mind. So Pete Alonso, we don't need him for $25 million a year. The Mets just do not need to go digging deep into their prospects. I mean, digging deep into their pockets to make that move. They could always wait till next year's free agency. You got Kyle Tucker. You got the Japanese star slugger. I always mess up his name. Murakami, I want to say. I'm going to learn it soon. But he's a 24-year-old star. Going to be 25 next offseason. Kyle Tucker, Vladdy, like they got really good options at the first base position. Kyle Tucker probably wouldn't play first base, but I mean, I liked Evan Roberts' idea of WFAN and Rico Bronya. I liked his idea of potentially seeing if Juan Soto would ever move to first base. And then you could sign a Kyle Tucker. Or maybe you sign Kyle Tucker and move Brandon Nimmo to DH. We were just talking about how great of a hitter he's been since 2020, outside of this year when he was hurt. And he still hit 24 home runs and had a career high in RBIs with 90 of them. So, with or without Pete Alonso, we're going to be fine. Do not worry, Mets fans. We are going to be fine. And just quite frankly, Alonso needs us more than we need him. And at the end of the day, I do believe that Pete Alonso will end up re-signing with the New York Mets. But listen, man, Stearns is confident in his team without him. Yes, I know Brett Beatty isn't that intriguing option, but like I said before, they have other options outside of Brett Beatty. One rumor that came up, I'm not too high on Spencer Torkelson of the Detroit Tigers, former number one prospect in baseball, had a 30 home run year just a few years ago, but he also strikes out 29% of the time. 29%. That's a downgrade. That is a downgrade. I would want to stay away from him. I'd rather give Brett Beatty, give Acuna, give Mauricio, maybe even Jet Williams at some point in the year a shot. I don't think Torkelson, although it could be, maybe a change of scenery. He was the number one prospect in baseball for a reason. But, I mean, so was Francisco Alvarez. And I've been on Francisco Alvarez all offseason. I know Francisco Alvarez has it in him. I know what he can do. We've seen it in the minors. We saw it in his rookie year. He's had really good stretches, but he's also had really bad stretches. Whereas Torkelson, he never even really has had a good stretch. Like I think Alvarez is just better than him. So I would rather bank on Francisco Alvarez to be the turnaround prospect. Well, turnaround number one prospect. You already have that guy in Francisco Alvarez. Why get another one? So Mets aren't an 80-win team. Mets aren't an 85-win team. They're a 90-win team. Like, give it a break. Their bullpen, in my opinion, is one of the most underrated bullpens on paper. Like, you got AJ Minter in the pen, who dominates lefties and does really good against righties. He's got a better career ERA than Tanner Scott. Everybody's whining about, why don't we get Tanner Scott? Well, we got AJ Minter, who's been in the NL East and has been the most consistent reliever since he's been in the league, basically, outside of Devin Williams. But AJ Minter is a very good arm to have, especially since he is a lefty. Kirby Yates, great. But guess what? He's 37 going on 38. So you got AJ Minter, you got Edwin Diaz. And if Edwin Diaz can be a shade of what he did in 2022, that's a great back end of the bullpen. Then you also got Jose Budo. You got Brazoban. Like, you got Reed Garrett, Daniel Nunez. Like this. And then if Clay Holmes doesn't work out as a starter, guess what? He's in the pen. And his one down year with the Yankees, a 3.14 ERA, right when he moved out of the closing role, he was great. So I'm very confident in this Mets bullpen. I'm confident in the Mets lineup with or without Alonso, because this lineup was 2 wins away from the World Series, 2 wins away over the Los Angeles Dodgers from making the World Series without Juan Soto. So you take Juan Soto, who walks a ton, a lot more than Pete Alonso does, strikes out a lot less than Pete Alonso does, a much better batting average than Pete Alonso has had. You put Juan Soto in that lineup over Pete Alonso in the NLCS. Who says we're not in the World Series in 2024? Like, let's be real. So don't be too worried. Don't be too worried. I still think the Mets are going to be one of the best teams in the National League. It's going to be hard to win the NL East because you do have the Atlanta Braves and the Philadelphia Phillies, who are no joke. But at the same time, they can make a deadline move. They can make another move in the offseason. Maybe trade for a guy like a starting pitcher. We see the Padres are willing to trade one of their guys, whether it's Dylan Cease, whether it's Michael King, who's been rumored to be on the trade block as of today or yesterday, I believe. So, yeah, Mets still got options to improve their roster outside of Pete Alonso because they already did improve their lineup without Pete Alonso. Pete Alonso would just be the icing on the cake. That's all it would be. We still have a very tasteful cake, I think. Maybe not as much icing without Pete Alonso, but still a good amount of icing. So that's my reference there with dessert and Pete Alonso and the Mets. But listen, according to John Heyman, according to Andy Martino, it seems like Pete Alonso wants to be a New York Met. Just the question is he willing to accept Steve Cohen and David Stern's demands? And I think at the end of the day, if he really was going to sign with another team, if he had better offers on the table, why hasn't he signed elsewhere? Why? So I'm under the impression that Pete Alonso and the Mets will have a reunion. Could it go till spring training? Yeah, maybe. But at the end of the day, I'm here on the night of January 28th, saying that Pete Alonso will be a New York Met in 2025. Maybe not a lifelong Met, but even if he's not a lifelong Met and he's a Met for the next 3 years, he's going to get his number retired. He goes to another team, he ain't getting his number retired anywhere. Anywhere. I also said this multiple times. Let's say Pete Alonso signs that 3-year deal. He's here for those 3 years, doesn't opt out. And we win a championship. Pete Alonso will still be valued as a fan favorite. Like, you will go to Mets games and you will see the number 20. Like, we still go to Mets games now and we see the number 48, Jacob deGrom. We see the number 5 with David Wright still. Pete Alonso has the chance to be that type of player. Jacob deGrom he's not a lifelong Met. But Pete Alonso, he comes back to the Mets. You can bank on in 15 years and 20 years, people will be wearing the number 20 to Citi Field still. Yeah, whereas if he goes to the Toronto Blue Jays, he goes to the San Francisco Giants, he goes to the Los Angeles Angels, Pete Alonso's jersey won't be worn in Citi Field in 15, 20 years. So Pete Alonso, not only just AAV-wise, not just years-wise, for his, I hate saying this, but for his legacy, Pete Alonso needs the Mets. Pete Alonso needs the Mets. So that's where I'm at. Let's hit the comments and we'll get into some other topics. He does want the money from the Mets. He does. He does, but he ain't getting that money. He ain't getting that money. And Peter, I'll ask you this. If he was going to get other money, if he was going to get a better offer, if he's had better offers on the table, then why are we sitting here on January 28th at 11:37 at night and Pete Alonso still hasn't signed with another team? Because he knows. Scott Boras definitely knows, especially after what Steve Cohen said publicly to Mets fans. He knows. They both know. Steve Cohen drew a line in the sand, and he said, we're not going over this much money. Whatever that money is, we're not going over this much money. We're not going over this many years. Take it or leave it. So far, he has left those offers on the table. And the Mets, for anybody who's also saying that David Stearns and Steve Cohen don't really want Pete Alonso, well, if they didn't really want Pete Alonso, they would have said bye-bye already. Even though Steve Cohen ripped Boras and Alonso apart on Saturday, publicly too, which is crazy, they still want him back. They're still in talks with Alonso, according to John Heyman. So they want him back. They just want him back for the right price. That simple. So yeah, that's where we're sitting now. Let's get into Steve Cohen's comments. Steve Cohen is proven to be the most unique owner in all of sports. Not only in baseball, but in all of sports. When's the last time an owner of a professional sports team has came out and not even in a press conference with just reporters, but in a press conference in front of fans at his own stadium and basically said, hey, we want Pete, but we don't want him that bad. And here's why. Here's why it makes sense from our point of view, why we don't want Pete back for that much money. And they just were booing David Stearns about 5-10 minutes prior to Steve Cohen's comments. And then after Steve Cohen talked, those Mets fans were cheering because everybody came to their senses after Steve Cohen made those comments that, hey, Pete isn't all that. Pete is out of his mind. The Mets really don't need Pete Alonso as bad as we all thought. So, and for those fans who did boo David Stearns, you paid the price to go there. You're definitely allowed to boo. Would I have booed? Hell no. But at the same time, this is New York. So for anybody yelling or pissed off at those boo birds, I'll say right now, you're out of your mind too. Because they paid a price to be there. They're allowed to cheer. They're allowed to boo. Derek Jeter got booed. Aaron Judge has gotten booed. David Wright has gotten booed. Pretty sure Mike Piazza got booed. Like, come on. It's New York. They're allowed to boo. I don't think David Stearns knew that Steve Cohen had a loaded rifle in his pocket ready to talk, but he did. And he put Mets fans in their place. Cohen's pissed. Cohen is pissed. But according to John Heyman, he's still willing to re-sign Pete Alonso, even though he's pissed him off that much. So Steve Cohen, good for him, man. Setting the record straight. Being honest. I think that's what every sports fan wants out of their owner. Honesty. Just be upfront and honest. And that's what Steve Cohen has done. And I think that's going to just make him even more lovable to Mets fans. Even after he ripped away Juan Soto from the Yankees. So good for Steve Cohen, man. And David Stearns, say what you want about him pulling pieces from the scrapyard, but until it doesn't work, I think we all need to shut up. How do you think we all need to shut up? I mean, am I confident in Frankie Montas and Clay Holmes to become like great starting pitchers? No. But can they be serviceable starting pitchers? Maybe. I think they can. I mean, Clay Holmes has had the best ground ball rate in all of baseball last year. I believe the year before that, he was like top 5. Frankie Montas, I mean, he had a great second half last year with the Oakland A's. A few years ago, he was actually a really good pitcher. So same thing when Manea came over. Same thing when Luis Severino came over. He turned around Jose Quintana in one offseason. Turned around David Peterson in one offseason. So let's see what he can do with Frankie Montas. Let's see what Jeremy Hefner can do. So I like Jeremy Hefner as a pitching coach, and I like David Stearns' eye on what he thinks Jeremy Hefner can work with. The Mets just, you look at the Mets a few years ago. They were a complete mess. They didn't know what they were doing. They had no clue what they were doing. The Wilpons, Sandy Alderson, they were just, this guy has good numbers. Let's sign him. And it was usually just one guy. Like, remember we signed Jason Bay? All because he had a very good career before he came here, and then that was the only move that they made. Remember when they let Jose Reyes walk? Like, that ain't happening anymore. And now I'm saying that with Pete Alonso potentially walking, but like, they brought back Brandon Nimmo. They brought back Edwin Diaz. They locked up Francisco Lindor. They do want their own, but they also want their own at the right price. They want their own at the right price. So we'll see how this ends. I am predicting on January 28th at 11:43 o'clock that Pete Alonso will re-sign with the Mets at some point this offseason. When? I have no clue. But Pete Alonso has been stealing all the headlines from Aaron Glenn, from Cody Bellinger, Paul Goldschmidt, Devin Williams. He's been stealing headlines from Brian Daboll and Joe Shane getting another shot. He's been stealing headlines from the New York Knicks, looking like one of the best teams in basketball over the past few weeks. Josh Hart being arguably, I would say, a top 15, top 20 most impactful player right now in the NBA. So we're going to get into all of that right now. Let's talk about Aaron Glenn going to the Jets, because I have wanted to talk about that for the past few weeks. And it is official as of last week that Aaron Glenn is indeed the head coach of the New York Jets. And it looks like he is at least, I would say, heavily interested in having Aaron Rodgers return. And if Aaron Rodgers returns, that means Davante Adams returns. Do we need Aaron Rodgers? I'm going to lean towards yes. I would say the Jets need Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Glenn needs Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Glenn has a chance in his first year, if he keeps Aaron Rodgers, which means Davante Adams stays. They can work things out with Garrett Wilson because he still is under contract. They don't just need to trade Garrett Wilson because Garrett Wilson was frustrated last year. Like, that's another thing. Garrett Wilson's frustrated. So what? So what? And Garrett Wilson's my favorite player. I love the talent he has. They don't have to trade him. You start winning ball games, things change. Things change. So Aaron Glenn, he's a unifier. Looks like a very good leader, a very intriguing leader. He's fiery. We saw in the press conference, he said, we're the New York freaking Jets, man. So, yeah. He said that he's going to analyze every decision. He doesn't want to make this just about Aaron Rodgers. They're going to look at every player, not just Aaron Rodgers, and they're going to make their decisions. But in my opinion, with the talent the New York Jets have, with Breece Hall, Garrett Wilson, if Davante Adams and Aaron Rodgers come back, look at the O-line. You got Vera Tucker. You got Fashanu. You got Joe Tippmann. You got two more good pieces in there. That's a very good offensive line. Flip to the defensive side. C.J. Mosley's still around. Quentin Williams. Jermaine Johnson's going to be coming back. Will McDonald's coming off a great year where he had over 12 sacks. Sauce Gardner looked like the cornerback he is and was in the second half of last year. The Jets still have a very talented roster. Are they a Super Bowl team? No. Could they be a playoff team? Yeah. Yeah, they could. I mean, if the Denver Broncos were a playoff team this year, if the Houston Texans were a playoff team this year, why can't the Jets next year? They always say third time's the charm. And I think third time could be the charm with Aaron Rodgers in year 3. So I'm leaning towards bringing Aaron Rodgers back. He's definitely not what he used to be. He's not the MVP player he used to be. He's not the Super Bowl champion he used to be. But he can take this team to the playoffs under the right head coach. And if Aaron Glenn is indeed the right head coach, I think he can take this team and end the longest playoff drought in professional sports right now. I think he could. So, New York Jets, bring Aaron Rodgers back, please. Please bring Aaron Rodgers back so we can bring back Davante Adams and we can have a semi-very good team. I'm not going to say very good team. I'll say semi-very good. But we'll see. We'll see what happens over these next few weeks. And then Jordan Travis, of course, also in that QB room. I don't want to throw him under the fire next year like some people do. I don't want Tyrod Taylor to be that bridge quarterback. Tyrod Taylor is also 36 years old with a big injury history. So if you want to give Tyrod Taylor a shot, then why wouldn't you want to give Aaron Rodgers a shot? And who are the other options outside of Aaron Rodgers as the bridge quarterbacks? Russell Wilson, Kirk Cousins, who's also in the same boat as Aaron Rodgers, coming off a torn Achilles 2 years ago. Like Aaron Rodgers, you got to remember, he also came off a torn Achilles. The first half, was he great? No. In the second half, turned things around. Looked much healthier. So, and even the first half, he was still making good throws. So we got to remember that. Who's another option out there? Sam Darnold. He's going to be coming with a hefty price tag. You know? Who do you want? Who's the other option? Justin Fields? Now, let's put it this way. If Justin Fields, let's say Russell Wilson never came in and became the starter for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and they just rolled with Justin Fields after they started off 4-2. Justin Fields throws for 28 passing touchdowns, over 3,800 yards. Justin Fields would be getting paid a lot of money this offseason. So Aaron Rodgers even said this before. My worst year is some people's best years, and Aaron Rodgers was right. His worst year is some people's best years. So Jets got to keep Aaron Rodgers. I love the hire of Aaron Glenn. I'm very excited for this next season to start, but at the same time, the best time for us Jets fans is always the off season. It's an old saying that we have, and right now, the best time in the last few years has been so far this offseason just because we got Aaron Glenn. And last year or 2 years ago, the best time was the offseason because we got Aaron Rodgers, fresh off, well, 2 years removed from 1 year removed actually from back-to-back MVP wins. So best time of the year for the Jets fans is right now, baby. It's going to be in the offseason. Speaking of football, we'll talk a little bit about this Super Bowl. I want to talk about the Super Bowl a little bit, even though I don't really talk too much national sports, but, it's a Super Bowl. Got to talk about it a little. Chiefs-Eagles rematch. What I'll say about that is I'm rooting for the Chiefs because I hate the Philadelphia Eagles. I hate the city of Philadelphia. I hate the entire state of Pennsylvania. And I truly hate the entire state of Pennsylvania because I hate Philadelphia. Philadelphia, I mean, people were like just ripping the Knicks fans apart when we made the playoffs a few years back in 2020. They were ripping us apart when we won that first round matchup 2 years ago. They were ripping us apart in 2021 when we got a win over the Boston Celtics in game 1. Remember that? The bing bong. Oh, well, it's your NBA championship. The Philadelphia Eagles just made the Super Bowl a few years ago. You won an NFC championship. Do you really need to have multiple arrests? People falling off light posts. People get like gunshots. Like, what is wrong with Philadelphia? You saw a video. I saw a video after they beat the Commanders. They were like circling these two Commanders fans who were doing absolutely nothing, and they just steal the guy's hat. They just steal the guy's hat. And that's probably the best thing that I've seen a Philadelphia Eagles fan do is just steal a hat. You don't just take someone's, and the guy was defenseless. What is he going to do? Some people are like, well, you guys should have done something. He should have turned around, punched the guy in the face. He punches the guy in the face, and then the 55 Eagles fans circling him are going to beat the crap out of him. People are out of their minds. So good for that Commanders fan, not letting the emotions get the best of him and just saying, dude, this ain't worth it. This ain't worth it. Good for him, man. Good for him. But Eagles fans, man, they are probably the most hated fan base in all of sports. All of sports. So I really hope Philadelphia gets demolished. But if there's one team in the NFL that can beat the Kansas City Chiefs this year, it's the Philadelphia Eagles. And a few years ago, the Eagles were this close to beating the Chiefs. This close. Jalen Hurts arguably should have won the Super Bowl MVP. Threw for over 300 yards, three touchdowns, only one turnover, a costly fumble. But outside of that, the Eagles should almost won and probably should have won if Hurts doesn't fumble. But now they have someone else. Now they have arguably, probably, actually, definitely the best running back in football in Saquon Barkley, who rushed for over 2,000 yards. I mean, the guy's unstoppable. He is unstoppable. So if I'm the Eagles, my game plan is Jalen Hurts, you ain't doing what you're doing a few years ago. We're just giving the ball to Saquon Barkley, and we're going to see if the Kansas City Chiefs can stop him. And if the Chiefs start to stop him, well, then we got Devontae Smith. We got A.J. Brown. We got Jalen Hurts, who can move all around in the pocket, take off for a 20, 25-yard run, sometimes 50-yard runs. Like, the Eagles are a very good team. So if I had to make a prediction on who's going to win this game, I'm going to say the Philadelphia Eagles. But as many of my friends say, as many NFL fans have said, the Kansas City Chiefs have the refs on their side. They have black magic. The Kansas City Chiefs, like, they are so tough to beat, especially when Mahomes hits the playoffs. We all forget during the regular seasons that Mahomes can move around, break off for a rush. But once he gets to the playoffs, if something's not open, Mahomes will break off. So I think it's going to be a great game. I think it's going to be a close battle. But I do expect the Philadelphia Eagles to win only because of Saquon Barkley. And I think Saquon Barkley gets the Super Bowl MVP. And that leads me to my next topic, the New York Giants. For anybody who's out there saying, oh, the New York Giants messed up and didn't sign Saquon Barkley, they're idiots. No. You're not wrong, but you're also not right at all. Should the Giants have not signed Daniel Jones a few years ago and gave that money to Saquon Barkley? 100%. But at the same time, is Saquon Barkley, if he's back on the Giants and Daniel Jones, let's say they never paid him, are the Giants in the Super Bowl right now with Saquon Barkley without Daniel Jones? No. No, 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 no. So you got a bunch of idiots saying that the Giants should have re-signed Saquon Barkley. No, those guys are idiots. Don't listen to them. Giants fans, don't let them get under your skin. You know, I know, we all know, smart football fans know. I'm not just smart football fans. I'm just saying basic football fans. Even my dad knows, and he's not, I would say, a smart football fan or a diehard Giants fan. Diehard Mets fan. Not diehard Giants fan, though. Even he knows. Saquon Barkley ain't doing what he's doing on the Eagles. I mean, he ain't doing what he's doing with the New York Giants rather than the Eagles. He's just dumb. People are dumb, man. Oh, wow. I feel bad for Giants fans having to deal with literally people from ESPN like Ryan Clark saying, well, the Giants should re-sign Saquon Barkley. It's on them. It's not on you. It's not on the Giants. But Joe Shane, I mean, I've always hated him. I've never thought he was a good hire. Brian Daboll, I think he's going to be a great head coach. I think if there's one guy that survives next year, it's going to be Brian Daboll. Brian Daboll's a good offensive mind, and you do need an offensive-minded head coach. And that's where I'm kind of worried about Aaron Glenn, because you look at all the offensive-minded head coach over the past few years, like the last 20 years, I think there's only been like 2 or 3, and that's Bill Belichick as a defensive-minded head coach. So if you're not Bill Belichick, good luck winning a Super Bowl as a defensive-minded head coach. Whereas these offensive minds, not only just in the playoffs, but in this, like Andy Reid, Nick Sirianni, Dan Campbell, all offensive-minded. Baltimore Ravens, Harbaugh, offensive-minded. Chargers, offensive-minded, another Harbaugh. So a lot of offensive-minded head coaches are winning in the NFL. So, and Brian Daboll, he's an offensive-minded head coach. He's the reason Josh Allen a few years ago had I think he only had 4 interceptions. He's the reason Daniel Jones had a great year in 2022. That's why I think the Giants should take a flyer on a Sam Darnold or a Jameis Winston. Sam Darnold has thrown a lot of interceptions throughout his career. A lot. But if he showed you anything with the Minnesota Vikings, and you could say, Kevin O'Connell, yes, he's a great coach, one of the best. But the only reason Sam Darnold threw 35 passing touchdowns with over 4,300 yards was because of Kevin O'Connell. And yes, I know they had Justin Jefferson. But guess who the Giants have? Malik Neighbors. And Brian Daboll, he knows you don't turn the ball over, you have a chance to win the game. So if you get a guy like Sam Darnold with Brian Daboll, I think that could be a good matchup. Especially since they have Malik Neighbors, Tyrone Tracy, Andrew Thomas coming back. Giants, they need to win next year. So another good quarterback they could look at, I would say, is obviously Justin Fields. I would take a flyer on him. But I would also take a flyer on Jameis Winston. One, it would be awesome to have Jameis Winston on a New York sports team. So for selfish reasons, imagine those press conferences. That would be really fun. But if you look at Jameis Winston's numbers, when he doesn't turn the ball over, let's just take away the interceptions from Jameis Winston. Against Pittsburgh on December 8th, 212 passing yards, 2 touchdowns. Against the Denver Broncos, 497 passing yards, 4 touchdowns. Against Pittsburgh on November 21st, 219 yards, no touchdowns, but we'll leave that out. Against New Orleans on November 17th, 395 passing yards, 2 passing touchdowns. And then you look at just his career numbers. I mean, 2019, the guy threw for 5,109 yards and 33 touchdowns. And then with Tampa Bay a few years before that, he throws for 4,090 yards, 28 touchdowns. In his rookie year, he threw for over 4,000 yards and 22 touchdowns. I know it's been a long time since 2015, and it has kind of been a long time since 2019. But Jameis Winston still showed you he can throw for over 300 yards in a game. He could throw for 3 passing touchdowns. He can even throw for 500 passing yards in a game. So Jameis Winston can move the ball down the field. So imagine a guy, what would Malik Neighbors' numbers look like with a Jameis Winston? Or yes, a Sam Darnold. So those would be my 2 wild cards for the Giants to sign, because the Giants are looking to win next year. If Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen have a losing season, they can kiss their jobs goodbye. So not only do the Giants need to win, but they're going to be trying to win because their jobs are on the line. It's on the line. So Giants need a quarterback. Stay away from Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson, I mean, so many people predicted this. When he's able to move, when he's able to get out of the pocket, he was a great quarterback for the Seattle Seahawks. But those days are well behind him. But in this day of age in the NFL, you need a quarterback that can move. So if it's Shedeur Sanders, who isn't Jalen Milroe running the ball, isn't Cam Ward running the ball, but he can move around in the pocket. Cam Ward, too, if he's available, you should take him. And the Giants, if let's say they take Travis Hunter 3rd overall, and let's say come the end of the first round, Jackson Dart is still available, why not take a flyer on a guy like Jackson Dart? Because in today's NFL, you need a quarterback. You need a mobile quarterback. Just look at all the quarterbacks that were in the postseason. Look at the Final Four. Jaden Daniels can move. Lamar Jackson can move. Pat Mahomes can move. Not Final Four, Final 6 or Final 8. But yeah, Jaden Daniels can move. Lamar Jackson can move. Josh Allen can move. Pat Mahomes can move. Like the least mobile quarterback in the NFL was Jared Goff. And what happened to them? A mobile quarterback walked into Detroit and beat the hell out of them. So today's day and age, you need a quarterback that can move. And I'm kind of hypocritical because I was just saying Aaron Rodgers, he can move. He can still move. Not as great as he used to, but I guess it's a little hypocritical for me to say I want the Jets to have Aaron Rodgers back, but we need a young quarterback that can move around. But, Jets, I would love them to take a guy like Jalen Milroe or Jackson Dart. Because as much as I love the talent that Travis Hunter was, as much as I want to say Travis Hunter could have been a first-round draft pick if he doesn't break his leg a few years ago with Florida State, and Florida State really sucked without him when he went down with that injury. But, I would much rather have a Jalen Milroe, because is Jordan Travis, is he going to come back what he was in college with the Jets if he ever does get a shot? So, but the Giants, it's going to be interesting to see who they do, because they're going to need a veteran quarterback, especially if they don't end up with Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward. But the only way they're ending up with Shedeur Sanders is if Dion and Shedeur both come out and say, we are not playing for you. We're not playing for you. We are playing for the New York Giants. Kind of like what Eli Manning did when he was drafted by the Chargers, and he basically said, I'm not playing for the Chargers. I'm not playing for the Chargers. I mean, the Titans with Shedeur Sanders really want to play for the Tennessee Titans. Would you really want to go to the Cleveland Browns where you have Deshaun Watson? You have to compete with him, and you got to be in Cleveland where they already showed you that they had a guy like Baker Mayfield. They had their franchise quarterback, their young franchise quarterback already. They drafted him with the number 1 overall pick, and they said, bye-bye. Hey, Deshaun Watson. And now what is Deshaun Watson doing? He sucked. And Deshaun Watson used to be an MVP caliber quarterback, and now they're already saying 3 years after they got him, or maybe 2, they're saying, we're done with you. We're done with you. So, Browns are a mess. Whereas the Giants, they have a good offensive-minded head coach. Daboll and Shedeur Sanders were seen dapping each other up just last week on the sidelines of I forgot what it was exactly, but seems like they like each other. So my hot take, throwing it back to my original podcast, the hot take. I'll say the Giants will end up with Shadur Sanders, but only if Shadur Sanders and Deion Sanders force their way into their hands. I don't think the Giants will have to trade up if they do that. Well, they definitely wouldn't have to. But let's say Shadur and Cam are off the board. You go for a guy. You go for a guy like Jackson Dart, I think. Well, you get Travis Hunter, obviously, because Travis Hunter, whether he's a wideout or a cornerback, the Giants have need at both. I think he could be a good red zone target. He had over 1,000 yards receiving, 17 receiving touchdowns, 4 interceptions. This guy is just an insane athlete. So we'll see. We'll see what goes on in the draft this year. All right, we talk Jets, we talk Giants, we talk Mets. Let's talk Yankees. Yankees haven't been the talk of the town, even though they made a lot of great offseason moves. I think the best one is Devin Williams. I mean, just take a look at Devin Williams' numbers. This guy, he's only 30 years old. Just last year, was hurt for a little bit, but last year when he was healthy, he was a beast. 1.25 ERA last year. His career ERA is 1.83. The Yankees undoubtedly have the best closer in baseball. The best closer in baseball. So, I mean, they lost Tim Hill, they lost Clay Holmes, but they gained the best reliever in baseball. So, let's take a look at who they have in their bullpen. I mean, Luke Weaver, that's another great option. Jake Cousins. I mean, Luke Weaver down the stretch for the Yankees and even in the playoffs, he was really good. Jake Cousins, also another great candidate in that Yankees bullpen. In the postseason, he did struggle, but in the 2024 regular season, he had a 2.37 ERA, 53 strikeouts in just 38 innings. You also have Ian Hamilton, who I really like. Not as great as Devin Williams, obviously, or Luke Weaver, but I mean, he had a 3.82 ERA, 41 strikeouts, and 37.2 innings of work last year. Like, they have a good bullpen. And then the one guy who I really like that they picked up was Michael Arias. Michael Arias, he's been up and down, but I mean, he was really, really highly touted when he was first picked up. Well, you look at his numbers in rookie ball, 3.09 ERA in just 23 innings, 22 strikeouts. In 2023, at 110 strikeouts in the minors in just 81.1 innings. So if Michael Arias can just figure something out in the bullpen, Yankees got a really, really good bullpen. I still think they could make some moves, especially at the second base position or third base position, wherever you want to put Jazz. I think a guy that would really fit the Yankees well is a guy who I'd want to see on the Mets, and that's Jose Iglesias. I mean, Jose Iglesias, say what you want. OMG guy. Oh, well, we're the Yankees. We don't want to shine former Mets. When? Well, Jose Iglesias hit .337 last year for the New York Mets in 85 games. Jose Iglesias is a .283 career hitter. And since 2021, his batting average is .294. He's got a .733 OPS with an on-base percentage of .333. Would you rather have that guy with a .294 batting average in the last 4 years? Or would you rather have a DJ LeMahieu, who's going on 38 soon, or 37 soon, I should say, who hit .204 last year, had a negative 1.6 WAR. In 2023, in 136 games, a 1.3 WAR. Whereas Jose Iglesias just most recently had a 3.1 WAR in 2024. Now, my big move for the Yankees would be you trade for Luis Arias. I've said it multiple times. You have Luis Arias hitting at the top of your order in front of Aaron Judge. He gets on base. You can't walk Aaron Judge. And then let's say Aaron Judge gets on base. Almost said Aaron Rodgers. Oh, a lot of Aarons in this town. Aaron Glenn, Aaron Rodgers, Aaron Judge, Aaron Boone. A lot of Aarons. But let's say you get Aaron Judge hitting behind Luis Arias. Aaron Judge is going to get on base, especially if you walk him. But he's probably going to hit a bomb. He's going to get some good pitches to hit. And then let's say they do walk him. And then you got runners on first and second. And you got Cody Bellinger up. Cody Bellinger is pretty good throughout his career with runners in scoring position. Even though I'm saying Cody Bellinger's best years are behind him, he's still a good player. And if Cody Bellinger, he's the wild card for the Yankees. If Cody Bellinger has a year like he does when he was with the Chicago Cubs his first season in 2023, where he hit 307, had an 881 OPS, and hit 26 home runs, 97 RBIs, the Yankees are going to be the best team in the AL East. But if Cody Bellinger has a year like he did last year, where he had just a 2.2 WAR compared to a 4.4 WAR 2 years ago, and hit 266 with a 751 OPS and only 18 home runs, then the Yankees might actually struggle a little bit. But Aaron Judge, we know, is going to go off. Garrett Cole, we know he's going to go off if he's healthy. Same thing with Max Fried. Same thing with Devin Williams. Paul Goldschmidt, I mean, he's just... I got no... Like, Cody Bellinger, yeah, his best years are behind him, but he still could be good. Paul Goldschmidt, he is declining. Paul Goldschmidt has significantly declined. Like, we talk about Pete Alonso declining. Let's talk about Paul Goldschmidt for a second. He had a 7.7 WAR in 22, 3.4 WAR in 2023, and then this past season, a 1.3 WAR. Struck out in 22. Let's take a look at those strikeout numbers. 141 times in 22, 161 in 23, 173 in 24. OPS, 981 in 22, 810 in 23, still pretty good. But then 2024, 716. Those are big drop after big drop after big drop. His walks are also down, 79 in 22, 87 in 23, just 47 in 24. Home run numbers also significantly down, 35 in 22, 25 in 23, 22 in 24. RBI, same thing, 115 in 22, 80 in 23, and just 65 in 2024. And, he was not hurt last year. He played in 154 games. He had a full year. And Paul Goldschmidt, his best years are definitely behind him. He's 37 years old. I get it. He's a 7-time All-Star, former NL MVP just a few years ago. But Paul Goldschmidt, his best years are certainly behind him. Now, could he go off and make me look like an idiot? 100%. 100%. If you think Paul Goldschmidt will go off, click those buttons on the little YouTube channel and go back a few seconds, screen record this clip and tag me in it, whatever you want to do, and tell me I'm an idiot. But I would bet $100 million that Paul not actually, I don't have $100 million. I would bet probably $100 that Paul Goldschmidt doesn't go off. I wouldn't bet it, but if that's the only money I would put on it, because I'm not putting $100 million on it. But Paul Goldschmidt has significantly declined in the past 3 years. He's not what he used to be. So I'm not confident in him. But Cody Bellinger is the wild card. Cody Bellinger has a year like he did a few years ago. The Yankees will be a very good team. They're still going to be the best team in the AL East. I don't care what moves the Red Sox made. Realistically, what have the Boston Red Sox done outside of Garrett Crochet? Let's be real. Let's be real. The Boston Red Sox are still going to be the Boston Red Sox. They relatively have the same exact roster as they did last year. The Baltimore Orioles, yeah, they're a good team. They're always a team that could just come out of nowhere with the young guys that they have. But I don't think they're better than the Yankees. Same thing with the Tampa Bay Rays. We all know historically they just come out of nowhere. But the Rays ain't coming out of nowhere this year and surpassing the Yankees. And then you got the Toronto Blue Jays. The Toronto Blue Jays are going to be the team battle, in my opinion, with the New York Yankees. They got Vladdy. They just signed Santander. You got George Springer. You got Bo Bichette, who I think is going to have a bounce-back year. They have a really good starting rotation. Blue Jays are the team that's going to be fighting with the Yankees. But, that wild card right there is Cody Bellinger. He's a wild card because, like I said, we know Aaron Judge, we know Garrett Cole, we know Max Fried, we know Devin Williams, we know Luke Weaver, we know Jake Cousins. We know Jazz Chisholm. He had a really good stint with the Yankees when he got traded there. And Jazz, say what you want about him. His numbers are actually pretty good throughout his career. Is he a little overhyped? Yeah, for sure. but he had 325 with the New York Yankees. 273 with the New York Yankees with a 325 on base percentage, 825 OPS in 46 games. That's because he also had Aaron Judge and Juan Soto and Stanton. And Stanton, I'm leaving out Stanton. When Stanton's healthy, Stanton proved when Stanton's healthy, he's a very good player. You take a look at even outside of the playoffs, Stan played a huge role in the Yankees' regular season last year. Last year, he had 27 home runs. 27 home runs in just 114 games, 72 RBIs. He's definitely not what he used to be. Like in 2021 with the Yankees, had 870 OPS, 273 batting average, 35 home runs. But he's still Giancarlo Stanton. And you get to the playoffs, we all know what Stanton can do. His numbers in the playoffs are ridiculous. A 994 in 6 appearances in the playoffs, 994 OPS, 265 batting average, 18 home runs in 41 games. He also doesn't strike out that often in the playoffs. Only 43 strikeouts. Oh, actually, that's wow. Never mind. I take that one back. 43 strikeouts and 151 at-bats. That's a lot. But, we all know what Stan can do in the playoffs when he's not striking out. So, Yankees will be fine. They will be fine. The only thing I'm worried about for the Yankees is DJ LeMahieu, Oswaldo Cabrera. That's not a good option, man. You want to say, Oswaldo Cabrera, he's still young. Oswaldo Cabrera is 25 years old now. Oswaldo Cabrera, through 3 seasons with the New York Yankees, has a 643 OPS, a 291 on-base percentage, and a 233 batting average. Anthony Volpe also needs to step his game up offensively, but he is there because he is arguably one of the best defensive shortstops in all of baseball. That's why he's a Gold Glove winner. But he also needs to step it up offensively. And if Anthony Volpe steps it up offensively, where we've seen flashes of Anthony Volpe go off a little bit here and there. But, you look at his numbers overall. He had 3.3 WAR in 2023 and 3.4 WAR at 22 and 23. That's actually pretty good. But a 288 on base percentage through his first 2 years, that's gotta be fixed. That's got to be fixed. But what also kind of calmed me down a little bit about Volpe and a little bit about my guy Francisco Alvarez is you look at Vladdy's numbers in his first 2 years in the bigs. They weren't that great either. 123 games in 2019, and he was young too. He was a 20-year-old kid. Only 15 home runs, batting average of, he still had a pretty good batting average, 272. But, he wasn't that great when he first came into the bigs. He isn't what he is now for sure, where he hit 323 last year and 33 home runs and 103 RBIs with an OPS of 940. But it does take some time for some players. Volpe's still young. He could definitely still turn things around. Defensively, that's where he's going to stay in the lineup, staying that starting, just being that starting shortstop. And they really have no other option outside of Anthony Volpe. But we'll see. And Jason Dominguez is also the wild card. They got a lot of wild cards. But Jason Dominguez, what's not to love about him? He's only 21 years old. And, he really never got a full opportunity. Not at all, actually. Only 18 games this past season. But, 6 home runs in 87 at-bats. What's that home run percentage? Pretty good home run percentage. So basically he hits a home run almost this past year. Basically hits a home run every 20 at-bats. It's pretty good. Pretty good. All right, let's take a look at his minor league numbers, though, just to show how good or why the Yankees really love him. Let's go over in 2024 with 3 teams in single A, double A, and triple A. In only 58 games, he had a 314 batting average, 11 home runs, an OPS of 880. That is really good. But even 2 years before that, 2 years prior, 2023, in a short stint with the Yanks, only 8 games, he had 4 home runs, the 980 OPS. Slugging percentage is 677. That's definitely a short stint for sure. But you look at 2023 numbers with AA and AAA total in 118 games, 15 home runs, 76 RBIs, 377 on base percentage, 802 OPS. I mean, that's the bread and butter with him. Through his 4 minor league seasons, he has a 274 career batting average, 373 on base percentage, 816 OPS. If he can be a shade of what he was in the minors, Jason Dominguez is going to be a very good ball player for years to come with the Yankees. So that's what I'll say on the Yankees. And I want to talk about Josh Hart because Josh Hart, man, Josh Hart literally is Josh Hart. He's Hart. He is the heart and soul of the Knicks. I mean, even on his down games, yesterday 4 points, but still 10 rebounds and 4 assists. This year he's averaging 13.9 points per game, 9.8 rebounds per game. 9.8 rebounds at 6'4" is insane. 5.7 assists. I think he's got the most triple doubles he's ever had in his career. And he's only played 46 games this year. We're not even at All-Star weekend. And he's matched his triple double total. 1.5 steals per game. I mean, this is going to be a hot take, but I think Josh Hart is playing at an all-NBA level this year. I find it hard to believe if Josh Hart wasn't on a team like the Brooklyn Nets, where they don't have a guy, that he wouldn't be an all-star averaging 20 points per game. Because, I mean, he's knocking down 56% of his shots, 36% of his threes. This is the best year of his career. He's playing out of his mind. But, I mean, the real guys are, I mean, and even McCall Bridges has been going off. 28 points just last night. And he has his games. He's averaging 18.3 a night. OG Anunoby, too. I mean, he's trying to get a little bit more usage on the offensive end. And it's kind of paid off the past few weeks. I mean, he just scored 33 points against the Kings just a few days ago, 12 of 18 shooting. You look at his numbers overall, 16.3 points per game as the fourth option. I mean, yeah, as the fourth option, that's pretty good. Shooting 35% from 3, 48% from the field overall. And then his defense is where he makes his bread. He's also averaging a steal and a half per game. But Karl-Anthony Towns, I mean, what more do you want to see out of him? 24.9 points per game, 13.8 rebounds, career high so far. Shooting 43% from behind the arc. At, how tall is he? 7 feet tall, shooting 43% behind the arc, 54% from the field. And then Jalen Brunson, his assist numbers are up. He's playing like a really true point guard, but he can still pick his spots and put the ball in the basket. Knicks are playing great. You know, they need to make a move, you know, whether it's, I don't want to just trust Mitchell Robinson. I've said this before, even when he does return. I mean, man, you limit his minutes to like 15, 20 minutes a game. Maybe he doesn't get hurt as much as he used to, but it feels like every year Mitchell Robinson misses significant time. But he would be a huge part for this Knicks team right now. They could really use him. But Knicks need a center. Mets and Alonso still in talks, according to John Heyman. Yankees, are they better than they were last year? No, but they're still the best team in the AL East, especially on paper. Jets, love the Aaron Glenn hire. Giants, let's go get Jameis frickin' Winston on a New York sports team so we can have some fun with Jameis Winston. All right, that's what I'll say today. Thank you guys for watching. We got over 422 watching across X and YouTube. Thank you, guys. I appreciate that. Each and every one of you. Love you. Let's go Knicks, baby. Let's go Knicks. And also, let's go Chiefs. Let's get that 3-peat because we hate Philadelphia, and especially the Philadelphia Eagles. All right, I'm out of here. Deuces.